Good evening and thanks for joining us. 9 weeks after the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in Canada, and this country has reached a critical moment. Now is the time we begin to find out how much the physical distancing and self-isolation we're doing is slowing the spread of the virus. There are signs in some places it is beginning to work. And tonight, there's another example of what happens when the virus spreads through a care home. 9 people connected to a long-term care home in Bobcaygeon, Ontario have died. That's according to the home's medical director. 24 staff have tested positive. It is the biggest outbreak in Ontario. Care home residents and the staff they rely on are among the most vulnerable. The facilities are often understaffed. People work in more than one home and few have personal protection equipment. Ontario has the most deaths in the country now, 33. And it has strict new advice tonight for anyone over the age of 70 or who has underlying health conditions. Stay home and self-isolate. That means don't leave the house at all. Abigail Bimman reports on the toll this virus is taking on a small-town care home.
We're all shedding tears.
Pinecrest Nursing Home's medical director describes it as a war zone. She says 9 people have died of COVID-19 and at least 35 residents are sick. There's 65 beds in the home.
Our worst nightmare and possibly beyond that came true.
Residents' family members like Lindsay Bleers can only wait at home, hoping for the best.
Wishing we could have those times, wishing I could just go in there, but unfortunately they're not even allowed to leave their room, so it's scary, it's sad.
We're putting an iron ring of protection around our seniors, especially those in long-term care and retirement homes.
There's no agency putting out information on care homes, no coordinated way to get a picture of what's inside. Stories like Pinecrest emerging through the media. The Ontario Premier's Iron Ring is $243 million to protect residents through more screening and cleaning and increased capacity. The province saw its biggest daily increase in cases overall. Doug Ford is now asking anyone over 70 and those who are immunocompromised to self-isolate and warns everyone else to physically distance.
We're prepared to take further action if we do not see the spread of this virus slow down in the coming days.
This is a really critical week in our fight against the coronavirus.
Ottawa stressing what happens in the next few weeks is so dependent on how people behave today, especially all those returning snowbirds and vacationers legally required to self-isolate.
Head directly home, do not stop for groceries or other essential supplies. Pick up the phone, get online and order what you need.
The Deputy Prime Minister acknowledges all these things aren't easy. Seniors trying to figure out online grocery orders, physical distancing, people having trouble reaching Service Canada by phone. But while Krista Freeland apologizes for the system kinks, she's very clear that all these measures are, quote, what we have to do. Abigail Bimman, Global News, Ottawa.
Here are the big picture numbers in Canada. At least 7,400 people have now tested positive for COVID-19 across the country. That's roughly 3% of the 220,000 people who have been tested so far. It's not a complete picture of how many are infected, though, because we know not everyone with symptoms is getting tested. Of those who are confirmed positive, about 7% are in the hospital, 3% are in critical condition, and about 1% of people who have tested positive have died. About half the confirmed cases in Canada are in Quebec. Close to 600 new cases were confirmed today alone, and that brings the total in Quebec to more than 3,400. There are clusters of outbreaks in several regions, and for the first time in Canada, an entire community has been put into quarantine. Mike Armstrong reports.
An entire Hasidic community north of Montreal is now officially quarantined. Aside from essential services, no one is allowed in or out. About 3,500 people have been ordered not to go anywhere.
It's quite an intervention. It's maybe the most difficult decision in my life, about what we do now.
Health officials tested about 80 people in the community last week. Not even half the results are back, but they already have 15 positives. All people who recently traveled to the U.S. Travel is still an issue in Quebec. Police have set up roadblocks at main entry points into the province, telling people they have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. The province also has checkpoints around some hotspots and is limiting access to northern parts of Quebec. Denser areas have been hit harder. One major cluster is in Montreal's West End. People not from the area are being told to stay away. The local mayor says the community skews older and is predominantly Jewish, two factors that likely played a role in the outbreak.
Well, it was expected because we have a lot of snowbirds that returned to our city in the last few weeks, and we also had a lot of celebrations.
There isn't one specific reason Quebec's been so badly hit. There are several. Travel corridors are a factor. There are a lot of links to New York City. But another factor the Premier points to is the calendar. Most provinces hold spring break in mid or late March, and they were canceled over COVID-19. Well, Quebec's spring break was the first week of March. Families went on vacation not knowing there was a threat. In fact, the week after, there were 4 days where everyone went back to school and work. Things didn't start shutting down until the 13th.
We're facing a long and tough battle.
Quebec's premier says the rate of testing also boosts the numbers. It's testing 808 people per 100,000 residents. The average in the other provinces is 558. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
We got more details today on the federal plan to keep businesses afloat. The wage subsidy will be available to all companies, no matter how many employees they have, if they've had a 30% or more drop in revenue because of the pandemic. The government will cover 75% of workers' wages on the first $58,000 of salary, which could mean payments of up to $847 a week. The subsidy will be available to eligible businesses, nonprofit groups, and charities as well, no matter how many people they employ. And the Prime Minister had a stern warning for any employers who might try to exploit the wage subsidy.
We are trusting you to do the right thing. If you have the means to pay the remaining 25% that's not covered by the subsidy, please do so. And if you think this is a system you can take advantage of or game, don't. There will be serious consequences for those who do.
The wage subsidy is massive. Nothing like it has been done in Canada before, and it's been welcomed across the board from business and political leaders, no matter their political stripe. This pandemic is testing our political leaders like never before. Today, Ontario's Premier Doug Ford made a point of praising the federal response, especially the efforts of Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland.
She's an absolute champion. You know, I talk to her every single day, and anything that we need and vice versa. We work very, very well together. We're on the same team. We're on Team Canada. This is how we're going to defeat and beat COVID-19, by all working together.
2 cruise ships with nearly 250 Canadians on board are on their way to Florida tonight after going through the Panama Canal, but it's not at all clear where they'll be able to dock. On the Zaandam, 4 people died and nearly 200 others have flu-like symptoms. Almost 800 passengers without symptoms were transferred to the sister ship, the Rotterdam. Both ships have been turned away by several Latin American countries, and today, Florida's governor said he wants the cruise ship company to dispatch medical personnel to the infected ship rather than make the state's scarce hospital beds available to any passengers.